At the lavish 60th birthday celebration for Harbor City's wealthiest man, I casually pulled out a cigarette. Before I could light it, Zach, my wife Vanessa's assistant, stormed over and slapped it right out of my hand. "Jesus, Mrs. Quinn," he barked, glaring at me like I'd spit on the carpet. "This is Mr. Westbrook's birthday party. How could Mr. Carrington act with such low-class behavior? One less cigarette won't kill you," he sneered. "But if people find out this unrefined nobody is your husband, how will you ever show your face again?" Vanessa didn't say a word in my defense. Her face was a mask of irritation, eyes cold. "God, I should have let you smoke yourself to death," she snapped. "Why can't you be more like Zach, someone who actually gives a damn about me?" Her voice dipped into a warning. "If I don't land an investor tonight because of your little stunt, I swear to God, we're done." I gave a bitter laugh, turned to the guest of honor, and raised an eyebrow. "Grandfather," I said to Mr. Westbrook, my voice calm but edged, "since when did lighting a cigarette at your party become a felony?" At Harbor City's most opulent birthday bash, Westbrook's 60th, my wife Vanessa was supposed to be out of town on a business trip. Yet there she was, gliding through the crowd on the arm of her assistant, Zach. They looked like a picture-perfect couple, poised, synchronized, almost tender. You'd think they were married, the way she leaned in when she laughed, the way he guided her through the sea of champagne and silk gowns. Disgusted, I slipped into a corner and lit a cigarette, needing something, anything, to dull the gnawing feeling in my gut. But before I could even bring it to my lips, Zach stormed over and smacked it from my hand. "How dare you light up at an event like this?" he shouted, loud enough for heads to swivel. "Do you even know what respect means?" His voice echoed off the marble walls, drawing curious stares from every direction. He shifted slightly, making sure the spotlight was squarely on me. "This," he gestured with a flourish, "this is exactly why Mrs. Quinn never brings you to events. Look at you. Vulgar. Unrefined. You're a walking embarrassment." He sneered, voice climbing for maximum effect. "I don't even know how someone like you got past the front gate, but for God's sake, don't let anyone find out you're her husband." He said it like a warning, but the way he practically shouted it. He wanted everyone in the room to hear. He thought he was being clever. Subtle. He wasn't. He just looked like a petty clown performing for an audience that wasn't even watching. Vanessa, who'd been to more of these social galas than she could count, should have known better than to let him stir the pot. But she didn't stop him. She never did. Vanessa looked at me like I was something she'd stepped in. "Did you really need to light that cigarette?" she hissed, her voice low but razor sharp. "You want to smoke like a chimney at home, fine. But here? At an event like this? You just had to act like some defiant teenager and make me the laughingstock of the room? Was that your goal? To sabotage my night? Make sure I walk away without a single investor? You'd think I'd set the place on fire, not sparked a cigarette." Zach, emboldened by Vanessa's rebuke, practically lit up with triumph. "Why don't you do us all a favor and step outside?" he said, smugness dripping from every word. "Unless you'd prefer to get thrown out by security. That'd be a real highlight for the evening. If you don't care about your own reputation, at least try not to drag Mrs. Quinn down with you." I pulled out another cigarette, calm and deliberate, lit it, then locked eyes with him. "Is there a rule against smoking here?" I asked coolly. "Because unless the man of the hour has spoken up, I'm wondering what authority you think you have to tell me what to do." I didn't raise my voice, but I didn't cushion the blow, either. The air between us tightened. Zach flinched. His confidence cracked just enough to show. Vanessa looked like she'd swallowed glass. Her jaw clenched, her eyes flashed. "Put it out. Now," she snapped. I didn't. Instead, I took a slow, intentional drag, then gestured to a passing waiter. "Bring me an ashtray, would you?" Vanessa was fuming now. Cole, she snapped. If you're going to rebel against me, at least learn to pick your moment. I let out a dry laugh. What exactly did I do? Far as I can tell, it's your assistant who's putting on a circus for the crowd. She scowled, her face tightening with barely restrained fury. You know what? Go ahead. Smoke all you want. Maybe you'll do us all a favor and drop dead. But Zach wasn't satisfied. He wanted blood, or at least, a little more spotlight. Clutching a neatly wrapped gift, he strode up to the front of the room where Mr. Westbrook stood surrounded by admirers, every step full of purpose and smug righteousness. Mr. Westbrook, he said, voice ringing clear, I apologize on behalf of Mrs. Quinn's husband. He tends to ignore basic decency and doesn't know how to respect others. I hope his behavior hasn't spoiled your celebration. He offered a contrite smile. I'm just her assistant, but I still understand what good manners look like. So let me say sorry on his behalf. I hope you won't hold it against Mrs. Quinn. Then, with a slight bow, he presented the gift. This is a token from both Mrs. Quinn and myself. Wishing you a long, prosperous life. Zach was trying to climb the ladder by stepping on my shoulders. I scoffed under my breath. Of course. A personal assistant's only real currency is flattery disguised as virtue. Zach froze, just for a second. Then he turned, his face struggling to hold its practiced composure, the faint glimmer of wounded pride flickering in his eyes. Mr. Carrington, Zach said, turning back to me with the conviction of a man auditioning for sainthood. Mrs. Quinn came tonight hoping to build meaningful relationships. Just how much do you despise her that you'd act so shamelessly and ruin that? He looked toward Vanessa with a pained expression. Mrs. Quinn, I truly feel sorry for you. Being married to someone like him, you deserve so much better. Then he turned back to me, righteous as ever. Look, Mr. Carrington, if you've got a problem with me, take it up with me in private. Just, have the decency to let Mrs. Quinn keep her dignity tonight. I couldn't help it, I laughed. He really did commit to the role. Vanessa, of course, was eating it up. Her eyes flashed with resentment as she turned on me. Cole, even Zach is trying to de-escalate things. He's being respectful, and you're still standing there like some stubborn fool. She lowered her voice and hissed through clenched teeth. Westbrook looks furious. And you just keep smoking like a nobody. You're about to cost me everything tonight. I glanced toward Mr. Westbrook. Yes, his face was grim, but not because of my cigarette. That much was obvious. I didn't bother responding to Vanessa or her lapdog. Instead, I walked calmly toward the guest of honor and offered him one of my cigarettes. This brand's not bad, I said lightly. Care to join me, Mr. Westbrook? The old man's features softened, his eyes gleaming with something that felt dangerously close to affection. I'm a cigar man myself, he said. But knock yourself out. If you want to smoke, smoke. I chuckled. Cigars every day? That palate of yours could use a little variety. The words had barely left my mouth before Vanessa hurled a full glass of wine into my face. Cole! Vanessa shrieked. How much more of a spectacle are you planning to make? You don't have a job. You don't do anything all day. The only reason you were even allowed into this party is because you're my husband. Don't start thinking you actually matter. She switched seamlessly into English, her voice now sharp enough to slice glass. Mr. Westbrook is a gentleman, he was polite enough not to say anything. But how dare you shove that cheap cigarette at him like you're some kind of equal? Apologize. Now. Red wine trickled down my face, soaking into the front of my shirt, leaving behind a deep, angry stain, one I already knew would never come out. Just like this marriage. No matter how much I scrubbed or denied it, the damage had already been done. Before I could speak, Zach shoved his way back into the scene. He grabbed my shoulder and gave me a hard kick behind the knee, aiming to drop me. I stumbled, nearly falling to the floor. "Mr. Carrington, everyone's watching," he hissed, voice smug and performative. "Be a man, say you're sorry." Fury surged through me. I shoved him off. "Don't put your hands on me." But he wasn't finished. He pulled back again, aiming another kick, harder this time, straight at the same spot. That was it. My patience snapped. I grabbed him by the collar, and without a second's hesitation, slammed a fist into his smug little face. Gasps rippled across the ballroom. Heads turned. Mouths dropped open. Glasses froze mid-toast. Every pair of eyes was on me now. They'd called me embarrassing. Said I was sabotaging Vanessa's big night. As if I were some useless hanger-on. But maybe Vanessa forgot, it was me who brought in the capital that kept her company afloat. It was me who pulled the strings to get her through those doors tonight. Even the invitation in her hand had my name behind it. I'd originally planned for her to attend the party with me. That was the whole point of the invitation. But instead, she claimed she had to travel for work, only to show up here with her assistant on her arm, using that same invite I gave her, and letting him provoke me. Zach's face was already swelling, a dark bruise blooming across his cheek. One of his teeth hit the floor with a soft ping. Vanessa gasped in horror and rushed over, hitting me in a panic, clawing at my hand until she pried her precious assistant free. Zach clutched his face, his eyes burning with venom. "Mrs. Quinn," he said, voice trembling with theatrics, "it's okay. As long as Mr. Carrington gets it out of his system and stops ruining your shot at investment, it's worth it." Vanessa's eyes welled up with tears. Her voice cracked as she scolded him, completely bypassing the man who had just punched him in the mouth. "Don't say something so ridiculous. I would never let you get hurt just to land a deal." Then she turned to me with pure fury in her voice. "Cole, get out. Now. Or I swear to God, I will file for divorce." I froze. I stared at her, stunned, not by the threat itself, but by when and why she chose to say it. She'd screamed it in front of everyone. Over Zach. The disappointment in my eyes was too raw to hide. She noticed. And she laughed, a sharp, bitter sound with no warmth left in it. "All these years, you've walked around like some savior, just because you brought in a few investors during the company's early days," she spat. "But let's be clear, those investors weren't betting on you. They were betting on me. My skills. My vision. You weren't even in the company." Her words hit harder than Zach's kicks ever could. Because I remembered her voice back then. When I had secured those first checks. The way she looked at me, teary-eyed, swearing she'd never forget what I did for her. Swearing she'd never let me down. But ever since Zach became her assistant, her promises turned to ash in her mouth. And I was the only one still holding on to them. A bitter ache clawed at my chest, but I forced the words out, steady and final. "Then let's divorce." Vanessa blinked, caught off guard. She hadn't expected me to agree, at least not so easily. But she wasn't about to back down. "Don't think I'm bluffing, Cole," she snapped, jaw clenched. "Zach's been giving everything he's got for this company. And you? You show up like a lunatic, cause a scene, and then assault him? I'm done with you. Completely done." Zach put on his best wounded hero expression and stepped forward, eyes shimmering with theatrical restraint. "Mrs. Quinn," he said softly, "it's truly my honor to work for someone like you. But there's something I just can't stay quiet about anymore." He turned to the room, then looked right at me, like he was about to drop a bombshell. "Mr. Carrington's little tantrum tonight, it wasn't just a mood swing. He's been sabotaging your investor meetings." "Why?" "Because he's been trying to cozy up to that woman from your rival firm. His little girlfriend. He's trying to ruin you. From the inside." Vanessa's face went pale, then red with rage. "You cheated on me," she shrieked. You dare cheat on me?" Before I could even breathe, she grabbed a plate from the nearest table and hurled it at me. It shattered against my shoulder in a spray of ceramic shards. "You bastard! I sacrificed everything for this family, for you. And this is how you repay me? With betrayal? With sabotage? Are you even human?" Zach kept stoking the flames, voice full of manufactured outrage. "I knew it," he said, shaking his head with mock sorrow. "I wondered how he got in tonight. Of course, it had to be her. His little mistress must have handed him that invitation, just to humiliate you. That was all it took. No proof. No pause. Just 3 sentences and a broken plate, and Vanessa had already chosen a side. Her eyes locked on mine, filled with something darker than anger, something almost primal. And in that moment, she looked at me like I was a man who'd murdered everything she ever loved. Mr. Westbrook's face had gone grim. He slammed his cane against the marble floor with a heavy crack, his voice cutting through the noise like a judge's gavel. "That's enough," he growled. "Idle gossip. Cole would never do something like that. I know this man, he wouldn't." But Zach had been waiting for this. With dramatic flair, he whipped out his phone and held it up for all to see. "Mr. Westbrook," he interrupted, eyes gleaming with malice, "Cole's so-called mistress is your little golden songbird. The one you've been pampering like a granddaughter. Don't let either of them keep fooling you." He swiped through the photos. There she was, a beautiful young woman, beaming as she clung to Mr. Westbrook's arm, her smile coy, his expression elated, doting. Then another photo, her arms looped around my neck, eyes sparkling with joy, while I looked, amused, maybe even cornered. Vanessa yanked the phone from Zach's hand, stared at the images, then hurled it into my chest. "You told me she was your sister. God, I was such an idiot." Gasps rippled through the room. The crowd didn't know where to look, at me, at Vanessa, or at Mr. Westbrook, who had apparently been keeping a mistress young enough to be his granddaughter, and now, perhaps, watching her kiss another man behind his back. I looked at Vanessa, really looked, and whatever flicker of emotion I had left for her finally died. My voice was rough, quiet, but every word landed. "Vanessa, I have never betrayed you. Not once. But it's clear now, you never gave me even a shred of trust." At that moment, a young waiter entered the hall, holding a silver ashtray. He froze as he took in the shattered plate, the torn silence, the eyes burning with accusation. "Mr. Carrington," he said, hesitantly, "you still want the ashtray?" Vanessa's eyes turned feral, bloodshot with rage. She looked like she was about to explode. Vanessa lunged forward, gripping the ashtray in both hands, and smashed it toward my head. "This is for the damn cigarette." I sidestepped on instinct. But Mr. Westbrook, startled by the sudden movement, stepped right into the path of the blow. Crack. The heavy glass hit him square in the forehead. He staggered, eyes wide, then collapsed backward like a felled tree. Gasps erupted. A woman screamed. Champagne glasses clinked to the floor. Vanessa froze, the ashtray slipping from her blood-slicked hands. But only for a second. Then she turned and pointed a shaking, accusatory finger at me. "Cole," she shrieked. "You slept with Mr. Westbrook's mistress, and now you're hiding behind him so he'd take the hit instead? What is this, some scheme to steal his estate with your little whore?" She dropped to her knees, scrambling to press napkins to Westbrook's bleeding forehead. "Please, Mr. Westbrook, don't be angry," she pleaded, frantic. "I'm divorcing him. I had no idea he was capable of something so disgusting. This whole night, it's all been a setup. The cigarette, the photos, he did it all to upset you on purpose. It was like watching a drowning woman push someone else underwater just to keep her own head above the surface. All to save her place at the table. I stood in silence, stunned, not by the chaos, but by how easily Vanessa twisted the narrative, how effortlessly she spun betrayal into performance. All just to sever herself from me cleanly. She turned to me again, her voice shrill with desperation. You had the nerve to challenge Mr. Westbrook? After what you've done? You're finished in harbor. You'll never get back into this circle again. Zach jumped in like some self-righteous cheerleader. Mr. Carrington, for God's sake, you nearly killed Mr. Westbrook. Get down on your knees and apologize. I let out a low, bitter laugh, the kind that scrapes from your chest when disbelief finally gives way to clarity. Shouldn't you be the ones apologizing? Zach blinked, mouth parted, wearing a look of pure innocence, as if he couldn't fathom how he'd become the villain in a story he'd worked so hard to script. Zach kept going, voice loud and righteous. You're the one who flirted with Mr. Westbrook's girl. You're the one who lit a cigarette at his party like it was a dive bar, then got him smashed in the head with an ashtray, and now you're playing victim? He looked around theatrically, soaking in the crowd's attention. If it weren't for me, Mr. Westbrook would probably still believe it was all an accident. But I can't let that lie stand. The man deserves the truth. He jabbed a finger at me, voice climbing. Do you even realize who he is? And who you're not? You humiliated him in front of half the city. If he decides to hold this against Mrs. Quinn, what happens to her company, huh? Vanessa crossed her arms and gave a tight nod, her expression carved from stone. You may still be my husband, she said coldly, but I'm not risking my entire business to cover for you. She pointed toward the bloodied man slumped in the chair. You're going to tell Mr. Westbrook this was all you're doing, every last bit of it. That it has nothing to do with me or my company. Then you'll sign the divorce papers. Do that, and I won't press the cheating scandal. Her eyes narrowed. But if we lose anything because of you, I swear you'll regret it. Mr. Westbrook sat quietly, still pressing a napkin to his bleeding forehead, his face pale and unreadable. But Zach, of course, thought he had it all figured out. Oh, he's furious, Zach muttered loud enough for the crowd to hear. That look on his face? He wants blood. He turned to me again, shaking his head in mock pity. Mr. Carrington, if you know what's good for you, you'll get down on your knees right now. Later, even licking his shoes won't be enough. Then he shoved me in the chest, forcing me a step back. As he leaned in close, his voice dropped to a whisper, taunting, venomous. Guess you weren't such good buddies with Westbrook after all. You're done. And I'm going to enjoy watching it happen. I looked at Vanessa, really looked at her. If she hadn't caused this whole spectacle tonight, she could have landed every deal she wanted. No one would have stood in her way. Then I turned to Mr. Westbrook. Grandfather, I said calmly, when exactly did you ban smoking at your birthday parties? And while we're at it, since when is my sister Mia suddenly your mistress? I let the words sink in, then added, voice colder now, someone else bashes your head open, and I'm the one who's supposed to kneel and lick your shoes in apology? The room fell deathly silent. Most of the guests were still reeling from the supposed scandal of Mr. Westbrook keeping a young canary. Now they looked completely stunned. Grandfather? I had brought Vanessa here tonight to introduce her to my family, formally. Properly. That was the plan. Now the bomb had gone off before I'd even lit the fuse. Vanessa's eyes flicked between Mr. Westbrook and me, her expression shifting, confusion, then disbelief, then rising panic. You never told me Mr. Westbrook was your grandfather. I gave her a long, mocking look, just as I opened my mouth to speak. But Zach cut in, his voice thick with scorn. Grandfather, he scoffed. You're seriously going there? His tone dripped with contempt. You picked the wrong person to mess with, and now that you've pissed off Mr. Westbrook, you're scrambling to rewrite the script and claim your family? He sneered and gestured grandly. You don't even have the same last name. You just figured the old man was too polite to call you out. That he'd smile and let you worm your way back in. Vanessa's shoulders squared. The fear in her eyes cooled into suspicion, and then into anger. She looked like someone who realized she'd been conned and was furious she hadn't seen it coming. Cole! Vanessa shouted, voice shaking with rage. Have you no shame left at all? You sleep with Mr. Westbrook's mistress, and now you've got the nerve to stand here and claim him as your grandfather? She looked half deranged now, lips trembling, hands clenched at her sides. The only reason my grandfather had kept his silence this long was out of respect for me. But Vanessa and Zach had pushed too far. They didn't understand restraint. They didn't know when to stop. And this time, he didn't. Mr. Westbrook slammed his cane against the floor again, the echo sharp and thunderous. There's a limit to how much filth a man can tolerate, he said, voice thunderous, finally losing his patience. You've insulted me, fine, I've heard worse. But dragging my granddaughter Mia into this and calling her some kind of canary? And now you're publicly slandering my grandson? He stared at them, eyes blazing. You two should be ashamed. But even with that declaration, even now, Zach couldn't keep his mouth shut. Oh, of course, he said with a twisted smile, so she's your granddaughter. Got it. My mistake. He gave a mock bow, dripping with sarcasm. But Mr. Westbrook, let's not pretend you're not getting a little forgetful these days. Just don't let yourself be taken in by a guy like Cole. He's not exactly trustworthy. My grandfather's chest was rising and falling, slow but heavy. I could see it in his eyes. Zach and Vanessa weren't just offending me anymore. They were trampling on his name, his legacy, and the people he considered family. And the irony? They had no idea they were standing at a party they never would have been invited to, if not for me. Zach still thought he was being clever. Still thought my grandfather was just covering his tracks to hide some salacious scandal. It was almost funny. Almost. I could see the anger tightening in my grandfather's chest, so I stepped closer, gently steadying him with a hand on his arm. Calmly, I said, since they're so set on divorce, I think it's time we pulled back all investments tied to Ms. Quinn's company. Grandfather, I added, voice steady, you don't need to keep backing her out of loyalty to me. He took a breath, deep, measured, and nodded slowly. Divorce her. Immediately, he said, his tone like cold steel. If I'd known the kind of woman you were marrying, I never would have given my blessing. There was no fire in his voice now, just disappointment, sharp and cutting. He was truly done. And truth be told, Vanessa's company had never been worth the money. The investments had always been charity in disguise, bleeding losses that no one wanted to name. But because she was my wife, he'd tolerated it. Shrugged it off. Let her slide. Because of me. And now? Now she'd brought her scheming assistant into his birthday party and made a mockery of the entire night. In front of his peers. His legacy. I felt heat rise up my neck, shame settling in like a burn I couldn't put out. Because I'd defended her. Time and time again. Told him she was brilliant. Ambitious. Worth betting on. Told him she was a wife I was proud to stand beside. And now? Now all I could do was stand there in front of him, the taste of my own words turning bitter in my mouth. My grandfather had built empires, cutthroat, efficient, and unforgiving. When he said he was done, he meant it. Without the protection of my name, Vanessa was just another liability. And he never let liabilities walk away unscathed, especially not ones who humiliated his family. My grandfather turned to the guests, his voice clear and cold as glass. Ladies and gentlemen, he said, there's no need to continue investing in Ms. Quinn's company. To put it plainly, it's a losing bet. A hush fell over the room. Most of the guests weren't sure what to believe. After all, I rarely appeared in public, and few knew the full story behind our marriage. But one thing was certain, when Westbrook spoke, people listened. If they wanted to stay in his good graces, they didn't need the truth, they needed alignment. So, one by one, they nodded, murmured agreement, shifted their stances. That's unfortunate, but it makes sense. I always had doubts about the numbers anyway. Of course. If Mr. Westbrook's out, we're out. Vanessa stood frozen, like someone struck by lightning, suddenly, violently aware of how badly she had miscalculated. She turned quickly to my grandfather, her voice rising in panic. Mr. Westbrook. The investments, those came from you? I didn't realize. I wasn't thinking. I said things I shouldn't have. Please don't take it personally. Don't pull out of the deal, okay? She was desperate now. But he didn't even glance in her direction. She hit a wall of silence harder than any insult. So she pivoted, to me. She rushed over, grabbing at my arm, her tone switching again, syrupy and pleading. Baby, I wasn't myself just now, she said quickly. I didn't mean any of it. We don't have to get divorced, okay? You can talk to your grandfather. Just have him reinvest, just a little. You know how much this company means to me. It's everything I've built. Her hands trembled on my sleeve. But I just looked at her, calm, quiet, cruel. Oh, now you remember we're married? I raised an eyebrow, my voice dipped in mockery. Weren't you the one screaming about divorce 10 minutes ago? She flinched. I stepped back, peeling her fingers off me. Too late, I said softly. Much too late. Zach stood there, watching Vanessa plead with me, and he couldn't take it. The desperation on her face, the way she clung to my arm, his Vanessa, groveling at my feet. He couldn't stomach it. He lunged forward and grabbed her wrist. Mrs. Quinn, you really believe his crap? He's not Mr. Westbrook's grandson. No way. Vanessa turned on him in a flash. She snatched a glass of red wine from the nearest tray and threw it straight into his face. Shut your mouth, she snapped. Who the hell invited you to speak right now? Her voice cracked like a whip. You're making a fool of yourself. Get out. Zach staggered back, stunned, drenched in red. His eyes were wide with disbelief. Mrs. Quinn, he stammered. How can you treat me like this? He wiped his face with a trembling hand, voice rising again in protest. You forgot? I'm the one who got you that invitation tonight. You wouldn't even be here if it weren't for me. Then he turned back to the crowd, shouting over the music and murmurs. I've met Mr. Westbrook's grandson. It's not him. His conviction was so fierce, so certain, it actually gave people pause. He wasn't posturing anymore. He believed it. Vanessa hesitated. Her eyes darted between Zach and me, and doubt flickered across her face. You've really seen Mr. Westbrook's grandson? She asked, suddenly unsure. You better not be lying to me. Zach stood tall, chest heaving. Of course I have. I even took a photo with him. He's the one who gave me the invitation. He pointed at me, his voice now shaking with rage. This guy? Cole? He's nobody. Vanessa's face hardened again. At the mention of a photo, her doubts came rushing back. Her gaze turned suspicious. Cold. I watched the shift in her eyes, felt the temperature drop. Interesting. I raised an eyebrow, calm on the outside, but inwardly curious. My grandfather only had one grandson. Me. So who, exactly, was the person Zach had met? Zach shot me a venomous glare as he whipped out his phone. I'm calling Mr. Westbrook's real grandson right now, he snarled. Let's see how long your little charade lasts. He dialed with dramatic flair, his thumb jabbing at the screen like a man delivering justice. I frowned. The number he dialed, it sounded oddly familiar. But Zach took my expression as fear. Getting nervous now, he sneered. Should have thought about that earlier. You took advantage of Mr. Westbrook's kindness, played on an old man's emotions. And now you think you are his grandson? You're delusional. His voice climbed higher, full of righteous fury. You told him to pull his investments, do you hear yourself? You're nothing but a con man. And people like you belong in prison. Then suddenly, ring. A phone buzzed somewhere in the ballroom. The tone cut through the silence like a spotlight. Everyone turned toward the sound, heads craning, eyes searching. Even Zach paused, scanning the crowd. Then he spotted someone standing awkwardly in the far corner and lit up. There he is! Zach shouted. Mr. Westbrook's real grandson. You made it, thank God. He waved him over, triumphant. You have to expose this fraud. Right here, right now. I turned toward the man Zach was pointing at, got a clear look at his face, and let out a cold, bitter laugh. I knew that face. He was one of the scholarship kids my family supported. A charity case. Bright, polite, soft-spoken. We let him stay at the estate during school breaks so he could earn extra money helping with errands and maintenance. And here he was, dressed in borrowed confidence, carrying my name into a room full of sharks. Pretending to be me. Noah panicked. The moment eyes turned to him, he spun around, pretending not to hear Zach, trying to slip away before anyone could get a better look. But he didn't get far. He ran straight into Mia. My sister blinked in surprise. Hey, Noah. Where are you off to in such a hurry? Then she grinned, clearly amused. Wait a minute, you're the one everyone's talking about. I heard my grandfather's been keeping a canary my age. Is that true? Noah froze. Caught. He had no exit now. Face flushing, he stammered, that's not true. People are just making things up. Gossip, that's all. Zach, the idiot, charged up to him, completely missing the shift in atmosphere. Come on, Mr. Westbrook, he said loudly, clapping a hand on Noah's shoulder. It's just a canary. Why so nervous? If you're man enough to keep one, be man enough to admit it. Then, with a smirk, or what? Is she planning to marry into the family now? I strolled toward them at a leisurely pace, eyes fixed on Noah, voice smooth with mockery. Noah, I said, how exactly did you go from scholarship student to Westbrook's long-lost grandson? Mind sharing the trick? I could use a few pointers. Noah's face drained of all color. In a flash, he shoved Zach's hand off and stepped back. I never said I was, he barked, loud and panicked. He's the one who assumed, I never claimed anything. He turned to the crowd, desperate now. I didn't give him an invitation. I couldn't. I don't have that kind of authority. The air shifted. Everyone could see it now, he knew exactly what it meant to bite the hand that fed him. Noah wasn't dumb. He understood that screwing over the man who paid your tuition and gave you a roof was a one-way ticket back to nowhere. Mia finally pieced it all together, the look on her face turning icy. So let me get this straight, she said slowly. Noah pretended to be my brother, and then had the audacity to spread rumors that I was my grandfather's mistress? Her voice sharpened like a blade. After everything our family did for you? That's how you repay us? Noah's knees buckled. He dropped to the floor and scrambled into a kneel, face pale, voice shaking. Miss Mia, please, it wasn't like that. I never said anything. He was the one who mistook me, and I didn't know how to fix it. Zach's expression curdled as the truth finally sank in. Noah wasn't Westbrook's grandson. He never had been. You lied to me? Zach barked, pointing a trembling finger. I asked if you were his grandson and you didn't deny it. And when I said I needed an invitation, you said you'd take care of it." His voice cracked as he spun toward Mr. Westbrook, suddenly groveling. "Sir, I swear I didn't mean to slander Mr. Carrington. I was misled. That boy, he tricked me." The shift was pathetic. Fast, spineless, and utterly transparent. Vanessa looked dazed, trying to keep up with the chaos. She turned to Noah. "If the invitation didn't come from you, then where did it come from?" I let out a cold, humorless laugh. "You tell me." She opened her mouth, started to speak, then paused. Her eyes darted nervously between me and Zach. And suddenly, she understood. The color drained from her face as she reached out to grab my arm again. "Baby, please," it was Zach, that idiot. I wasn't thinking straight. I was just confused. "I'll fire him the second we get home. Just forgive me, okay?" Her voice cracked. "I messed up, but I was scared. You know how much pressure I've been under. Can't we just forget tonight happened?" I pulled my arm back, calm and final. "No." Her mouth hung open. But I'd made up my mind. I was her husband. And yet a few words from Zach had been enough to make her publicly humiliate me, over and over. If she'd said one thing in my defense, just one, if she'd told Zach to shut his mouth, even once, none of this would have happened. But she didn't. Now, the arrogance in her eyes had vanished completely. All that remained was desperate, pathetic apology after apology. I didn't care to respond. Instead, I nodded to Mia and gently motioned for her to help me escort our grandfather out. The wound on his forehead was still bleeding, and we needed to tend to it. As we walked away, I paused and looked back at the two of them, Vanessa and Zach, frozen in shame and confusion. "Oh, right," I said casually. "Forgot to mention. Mia and I took our mother's last name. That's why we're not called Westbrook." Their faces dropped. We left them standing there in silence. By the time I'd finished cleaning and dressing my grandfather's injury, my phone had already started lighting up. Call after call. Vanessa. I didn't need to answer to know what she'd say, crying, begging, promising it was all a mistake. Asking me to talk to my grandfather. To fix things. But why should I? I forwarded everything straight to my lawyer. That same afternoon, I had a divorce agreement drawn up, signed it, and sent it to her through a courier. There was nothing in that house worth going back for. The next morning, it all hit the news. Someone at the party had recorded everything, Vanessa shrieking, Zach babbling like a fool, the moment the ashtray smashed into my grandfather's forehead. It was all there, crystal clear. The internet had a field day. Comment sections were flooded with ridicule. People laughed at their desperation, their entitlement, their fall from grace. And the fallout was swift. With my grandfather's public disavowal, the investors pulled out first. Then the remaining business partners followed suit. By the end of the day, Vanessa's company was circling the drain. Bankruptcy was only a matter of time. As for Noah, he didn't walk away unscathed. The Westbrook family officially withdrew their sponsorship. Every scholarship, every stipend, gone overnight. His name and face were all over the internet too, caught on camera alongside Vanessa and Zach, looking like a deer in headlights. When he returned to school, his classmates greeted him with sneers and whispers. The jokes didn't stop for days. He was humiliated. Publicly. Completely. And I had no sympathy for him. He deserved every second of it. But it didn't stop there. Once we started digging, the real picture came into focus, and it was worse than we imagined. Over the years, Noah had used my name to con people out of money. Pretending to be connected, promising influence, accepting favors. Now the truth was out. And the people he'd fooled? They were coming for him. Let's just say, he wouldn't be sleeping well anytime soon. As for Vanessa, she wasn't done. One evening, I returned to the estate only to find her outside, waiting by the driveway, drenched from the rain and kneeling in front of my car. She looked nothing like the arrogant woman who once barked orders at me in ballrooms. She looked ruined. "Baby, please," she sobbed. "I don't want a divorce. You can't just throw everything away over one little mistake. You promised, that even if I messed up, you'd still forgive me." I stared at her for a moment, then finally spoke, my voice calm, tired, and stripped of any softness. "How many times have I forgiven you already? Since the day you hired Zach, it's been nothing but forgiveness. I forgave you for not coming home at night. I forgave you for taking him to every gala, every event. I forgave you when you forgot our anniversary because you were too busy helping his dog give birth." I stopped there. Because the rest? The rest made me sick just thinking about it. And I was done being sick. I looked at Vanessa. And in that moment, I couldn't find a trace of the woman I once loved. The woman I married, she had been strong, hopeful, kind. I still remembered how she used to slip bread and milk into my backpack back in college, thinking I was struggling to make ends meet. That quiet generosity, that gentle heart, it was what made me fall in love with her in the first place. She never knew the truth about my family. I never told her. Not because I didn't trust her, but because she once told me how much she hated lies. I was afraid that if I told her who I really was, she'd feel betrayed. But I believed marriage should be built on honesty. So eventually, I chose to tell her. And maybe, deep down, I told her then because a part of me was already preparing to say goodbye. I thought, even if this marriage ended, it shouldn't end with deception. Because once, we were real. Even if her favoritism toward Zach had become something I couldn't ignore anymore. But I never expected she'd refuse even that final ounce of dignity. That she'd cling not out of love, but out of survival. She didn't want to part peacefully. She didn't want closure. I wasn't her husband in her eyes anymore, I was an obstacle. A liability. And now, this, her groveling at my doorstep, begging for forgiveness? It wasn't for me. It was for the company. For the investors. For the reputation. She wasn't asking me to stay because she loved me. She was asking me to save her. And I think she knew, by the way I looked at her. My gaze was too raw, too honest. And it burned her. She flinched, just slightly, like the truth in my eyes had cut deeper than any insult. She broke down completely. Her sobs were no longer restrained, loud, raw, uncontrollable. "I know I messed up," she cried. "I know I did. I was just under so much pressure, and Zach, he always knew what to say. He made me feel seen when I was falling apart." Her words spilled out like something she'd been holding in for far too long. "Back in school, you were everything. Brilliant. Untouchable. I pushed myself harder than I ever had in my life just to feel worthy of you. That's why I started the company, so I could prove that I was enough." Her voice cracked again. "The truth is, I always knew I wasn't cut out for it. I just didn't want to admit it. Not to myself. Not to you." Her shoulders shook violently. "And then Zach came along, and he kept feeding me lies I wanted to believe. He told me I was strong, brilliant, unstoppable. And I bought it, because I was desperate to be someone. Someone who wasn't just your wife." She looked up at me through tear-streaked eyes, face crumpled in pain. "I couldn't face you. Because every time I did, I remembered who I really was underneath all the pretending. You didn't even have to say anything, you were just you. And I felt like a fraud. I never stopped loving you," she whispered. "I swear I didn't." I looked at her quietly. There was no anger left in me. Just a deep, quiet ache. I had always known about her anxiety. Her fear of not being enough. That's why I asked my grandfather to support her. That's why I kept reassuring her she didn't have to prove anything. That she was enough, just as she was. But none of it had reached her. Somehow, Zach's flattery cut deeper than my honesty ever had. I took a breath. "Vanessa," I said gently, "don't waste any more time. Sign the divorce papers. If you won't, I'll file a lawsuit." She didn't move. Still kneeling in front of my car, soaked in tears and pride, staring at me with a kind of stubborn desperation. "I won't sign," she whispered. "I won't get up until you forgive me. I won't." Her voice trembled, but her eyes were locked on mine. Still begging. Still holding on to something that no longer existed. I switched places with the driver. Slid behind the wheel. Started the engine. Then I drove forward, slow, deliberate, stopping just inches from where Vanessa knelt, still refusing to move. She shrieked and scrambled to her feet, stumbling back in panic. I let out a soft laugh. "Did you forget," I murmured, "I used to be a damn good race car driver?" I watched her run. And for a moment, I remembered why I gave it up in the first place. It wasn't for an injury, or a crash, or a crisis of confidence. It was for her. Because Vanessa once said racing was reckless. Immature. A waste of time. So I walked away from the track. I gave up the one thing that made me feel alive. And stayed home instead, doing chores, fixing sinks, handling errands. Alone. My only outlet, in the end, was smoking. Even that, I never did in front of her. But last night, at my grandfather's birthday party, the woman I gave everything up for stood in a room full of people and acted like a cigarette made me less than human. Called me a disgrace. And now? Now came Zach. He leapt from a cab, spotted Vanessa, and rushed toward her. His hand clamped tight around her arm. "You don't get to fire me," he shouted. Vanessa, already cracked from the night before, finally shattered. She turned on him like a cornered animal, fists flying. "This is all your fault," she screamed. "If it weren't for you, none of this would have happened. You ruined my marriage. You destroyed everything, you bastard." Zach's hand whipped across her face. The slap echoed through the driveway. "How is this my fault?" he snapped. "I didn't make you fall for me. I just said a few nice things. You're the one who came running. I never even pretended to love you. I just didn't say no." Then he sneered. "And when I was messing with Cole, undermining him in front of everyone, you didn't stop me. You agreed with me. You let me do it." His voice dropped lower, more dangerous. "And if you think you're going to fire me now, I'll post those photos." Vanessa froze. Her eyes darted to me, full of panic, dread, humiliation. Whatever those photos were, they weren't ordinary. But I didn't flinch. Because they had nothing to do with me anymore. She was no longer my wife. Her lies, her scandals, her secrets, none of it belonged to me now. Vanessa was trembling, but her voice was venomous. "If you dare post anything, I'll go to the police. I've already been humiliated enough. What's a little more?" And then they were at it again. Screaming. Shoving. Vanessa clawed at Zach's face, leaving angry red scratches down his cheek. Zach retaliated with a backhand that split her lip. I watched for a moment. Then turned away. It was over. Whatever fire had once lived between us was long gone, and watching the ashes blow around in circles didn't interest me anymore. A few days later, the signed divorce papers arrived. Neatly delivered in an envelope, as if that could undo the wreckage of the past few years. Along with them came a strange little package. A stack of crinkled, brightly colored bread wrappers. The ones she used to sneak into my backpack when she thought I was too proud to ask for help. Every single one of them, I'd saved. Back then, they meant something. Now? I dropped them in the trash without a second glance. Mia peeked into the kitchen and made a face. Wow. Finally snapped out of it, huh? I shot her a look but didn't respond. She grinned and slid onto the barstool next to me. So, I might have a tiny favor to ask. My company's short a few solid programmers. She leaned in closer. My amazing, brilliant, handsome older brother, would you mind helping me build a few game prototypes? Pretty please. I raised an eyebrow and held up my phone, flashing the latest transaction from grandfather. Do I look like I need your profit-sharing plan? Mia let out a dramatic groan. Ugh. Are you sure you're my real brother? Come on. Just help me out. You've got nothing better to do anyway. She wasn't wrong. I was free. I was calm. And yes, I was a little bored. Fine, I said, exhaling. But I'm not working overtime. Mia shot our grandfather a double thumbs up behind my back. I pretended not to notice. I knew what Mia and Grandpa were doing. They didn't say it outright, but I could tell. They were worried I wouldn't move on. That I'd get stuck in the wreckage of that marriage. So they gave me something new to focus on. Something that required my hands, my brain, and eventually, my heart. And it worked. My family is good. Really good. Vanessa had a family, too. Which made it all the more baffling how easily she could humiliate mine, how quickly she turned her resentment on the people who'd never stopped supporting me. But that was past. Mia's game studio, on the other hand? That was very much present, and far more legitimate than Vanessa's ever was. It was a room full of young creatives, bursting with strange ideas and chaotic energy. But there was something refreshing about it. Raw. Honest. And with my help, their project finally took shape. The moment we launched it, it exploded. Mia was over the moon. Practically glowing with happiness. She really was easy to please. And maybe being a game developer wasn't such a bad life after all. The next time I heard anything about Vanessa, it was in passing, after her company officially folded. She tried applying for new jobs, but no one would touch her. She was too famous now, for all the wrong reasons. Zach, ever the opportunist, had moved on. He'd latched onto a new rich woman and reportedly spent his days mocking Vanessa behind her back. That didn't last long either. Vanessa, furious, finally did the math. She'd spent more on Zach than her company ever made. She sued him to get the money back. It worked, but not the way she hoped. His new sponsor ditched him the moment the lawsuit hit. He retaliated the only way a coward could, by refusing to pay and hiring someone to rough her up. That was the final snap. Vanessa spiraled. She blamed Zach for everything, her losses, her shame, her fall. And eventually, she snapped. They committed her to a psychiatric facility after she was found wandering the street, barefoot and screaming. It was tragic. But none of it had anything to do with me anymore. I had lines of code to debug. A new game engine to build. And a very persistent sister asking about performance bonuses. Hopefully, Mia gives me a raise soon.